welcome. I am Awadesh Kumar Mishra and today I am going to talk about what is reading and what is the nature of reading. Reading is an interactive process that goes on between the reader and the text, resulting in comprehension. A multifaceted process involving word recognition, comprehension, fluency and motivation. Reading is making meaning from print. It requires that we identify the words in print, that is word recognition, construct an understanding from them, comprehension, coordinate identifying words and making meaning so that reading is automatic and accurate. That refers to as fluency. There are several models of reading and the famous ones are top-down model and bottom-up model, but this particular model, which is called interactive model of reading given by Rumelhart in 1970s, it talks about various other things, not only top-down model and bottom-up model, so some other processes as well. So this is a kind of combination of all the processes that have been talked in top-down model and bottom-up model. As you can see here, it has various components: grapheme input, what we read, when we read words, so what are the letters of the alphabet there used, etc. Visual information store, VIS, and also referred to as visuals. Then we have feature extraction device. Next is pattern synthesizer. Then pattern synthesizer connects to syntactical knowledge, that is knowledge about the syntactic structure, the sentence structure, the word structure in what we read. Semantic knowledge, the meaning part. Next is orthographic knowledge, how the words have been arranged, how the letters have been used in words and sentences. And next is lexical knowledge, what kind of knowledge we have about the world. This lexical knowledge refers to the knowledge that we store in our brain. As I had mentioned in some other session, that what you do when we learn a language or when we acquire a language, the words are stored in mind, in brain. They are not stored as the words as I am speaking or the written words, rather they are stored as lexeme. That's why the term mental lexicon has been used for this kind of word store. Mental lexicon. Lexicon is a collection of words, lexemes. So now let's differentiate between lexeme and word first here, then only we'll proceed. Lexeme is an abstract concept and words are stored as lexemes in our brain. They represent the basic meaning. They can occur independently as a basic unit of meaning, and the words are the physical or concrete forms of the lexemes. For example, if you have, say, let's take good, better and best. These are three words that we speak, that we can read, we can see them. But if you look at the structure of good, better and best, the meaning is common. One meaning is common there, and that is good. So we call good a lexeme, and good, better and best are the three word forms of the lexeme good. So words are stored in that form, and then we also know that the words are stored in terms of their phonological shape, how they are to be pronounced, what kind of sounds they have, and also if a person knows how to read and write, then the orthographic information is also there. They also contain information about the syntax, and naturally they do contain the information about meaning of a word. So all that composes the knowledge of the world. And then only when these things have interacted and we have used them properly, then only the text interpretation happens. And individuals' reading skills and strategies, that is feature extraction device, are guided by the motivation or purpose of reading a text, visual information store, and they interact with her comprehension pattern synthesizer, which then interacts with her linguistic and background knowledge to produce an interpretation of the text. So I have used here two terms, linguistic and background knowledge. then only you can have a proper interpretation of the text. So, linguistic knowledge is what is contained in the head, in the mind, in the brain. So, that is linguistic knowledge, and background knowledge is whatever information we have gathered from our experience by reading something, listening to someone, whatever we do in the world, they constitute our background knowledge. All the information that we have stored in our brain, not only the words, linguistic structure of things. And because there are differences in the language, social and cultural background of L1 and L2 language readers, the L1 and L2 readers read a text differently. So, what happens? We have already talked about in various lessons that languages differ in terms of social and cultural matters. So, every language constructs their society, identity, culture differently. So, that is why if a person reads in her native language, then the exposure to her culture and society will be different. So, she will read the same material differently. And L2 language readers, that means a second language reader, she does not have so much information about the culture of another language, but she may be very good in her own culture and information about her society. So, the L1 and L2 readers, they read a text differently based on their experience, what kind of linguistic structure they know, what kind of linguistic knowledge they have, and also what kind of background knowledge about the world they have. Now, let us talk about what are the components of reading. So, reading takes help of the following components. Number one is phonics, that is associating the letters with the speech sounds they represent. As we have already talked earlier, that see, letters we read, they actually represent certain sounds, because language is spoken first and then it is written. So, those sounds are represented through some letters in the alphabet. So, phonics is how to understand that which letter connects with which sound, speech sound that it represents. Next is phonemic awareness, that is the ability to hear and manipulate sounds in words. Phonics and phonemic awareness are part of phonological awareness, but phonics is different from phonemic awareness. So, phonics is connecting letter with a speech sound, and phonemic awareness is how those speech sounds make changes or how they affect the meaning of words. For example, we know that in English words begin with ka, ta, pa, la, ra, etc. So, if you are given a word cat, so it has C, A and T, but it represents three sounds ka, a and t. So, C is for ka, A, letter A represents a and letter T represents t. So, phonics would be that C represents the sound ka, A represents the sound a and T represents the sound t. So, that is phonics. But now you look at the same example. If you change C in written language to let's say bat, B. So, cat becomes bat. If you change C to B, then the meaning has changed. So, here the question is, so if it were phonics, then the children will be learning that B sound represents, B letter represents the sound B. Other sounds are same, a and t. But in terms of phonemic awareness, they have to be aware that by replacing C with B, that is by replacing the sound ka with b, has resulted in the change in meaning. So, this is one example about phonemic awareness. Next is vocabulary, which is the knowledge of words. So, as we must have learnt earlier, that vocabulary is a broad area and reading cannot actually take place without proper understanding of the vocabulary of that language. Fluency is the ability to speak or express a language effortlessly and correctly. So, in reading also this is important, because unless you read effortlessly and correctly, then you will not gain information, you will not gain much knowledge, you won't be able to comprehend what you have read properly. That's why fluency is important. And the last thing is comprehension, that is understanding of text. So comprehension is the ultimate goal. We read something to comprehend something, to understand something, what has been written, what the author wants to say. When he is writing something and when we read something, we want to reach to that comprehension. We want to understand and comprehend what is being said in a written text. Sometimes let's see some examples what you should know is important in reading. Sometimes you can make meaning from print without being able to identify all the words. Sometimes you can identify words without being able to construct much meaning from them. For example, let's look at lines from Lewis Carroll's poem Jabberwocky. So it was brillig and the slithy tubs did gyre and gimble in the wabe, all mimsy were the borogobes and the mom rats outgrab. So I have tried to read it, it's very difficult. So you saw that although one can read, because if someone knows the Roman script and the orthography, then this is fairly easy to read, but we do not comprehend anything. We can't make much meaning out of it. Now let's look at some other example. Sometimes you can identify words and comprehend them, but if the processes don't come together smoothly, reading will still be a labored process. Reading will be difficult. For example, let's try to read the following sentence. If you look at it, I can read it, but let's see, it isn't as if the words are difficult to identify or understand, but the spaces make you pause between words, which means your reading is less fluent. So as we see, there are a lot of gap between two words. So these spaces also make reading difficult or labored. We have to make a hard effort to read it actually. But if they were written properly, that means spacing was proper and all the lines aligned to the left, it, and then next line began just below it, next line below that. So then the reading would be easier. So spacing also matters in reading. Reading presupposes oral mastering of sounds and speech events in a language. So this in sum means that reading presupposes mastery of the oral language. If a person doesn't know how to use a language, if she listens to something and she doesn't understand it, if she can't speak that language, then even if she knows the script, she may not be able to read a written text in that particular language. This is what is meant by this. And then we also know that it is important to know all the speech events, for what speech is used, for persuasion, for say scanning, or for getting some gist of something, etc. So that also the person has to understand the pragmatics, what for language has been used in the real life situation, in real context. So all those things, if that is understood, then only the reading will be complete. So it depends on the mastery of the oral language. The person has to know the language. Vocabulary is a major factor in developing facility in reading and also in writing. So vocabulary is a factor in developing facility in reading. That means without vocabulary, without proper understanding of all the words, it's not possible for someone to read fluently. And as you know, vocabulary, there are two types generally. So we talk about sight vocabulary, sight words, and the content words. Sight words are, for reading them, you do not need much effort to make. They can be read easily. That means by looking at them, you can understand what they have been used for. Whereas the content words have some content, they have some meaning in real life. So that's why you have to learn the meaning of those words. And then only, so if you have understood many words, how they can be used in different contexts. For example, certain words denote something, they also connote something else. For example, in Hindi, if you know some Hindi, you will know a word is gadha, which is donkey in English. Now, gadha denotes an animal, but its connotation is that someone who is foolish. So, if you call a person gadha, that person may be angry. Why? Because the word gadha, donkey, denotes foolishness. So, many words, it connotes foolishness. So, many words have denotation and they also have connotational meaning. They have some tinge or shade of meaning which is different from its original meaning, its denotation. So, all these things have to be understood by the reader. Then only she can read fluently. The better one controls vocabulary in language in all its socio-cultural nuances and its uses in different linguistic contexts, that one is likely to be a better reader. So, you control vocabulary, then also all its socio-cultural nuances. For example, it is not enough for a person to master the pronouns in Hindi. If someone is learning Hindi as a second language, she may learn that second person pronouns are tum and aap. But she also has to understand that these three pronouns are socio-culturally used differently. So, you can address certain people by using tu. So, a child or a person belonging to a very lower class may be addressed with tu, and tum will be used with friends and maybe brothers and sisters, your siblings, and aap has to be used with people who command some respect, who are in higher positions. So, see, this is socio-cultural nuance of these three words. So, they are used differently in society, in different cultural contexts. So, that also has to be mastered by the reader. So, this is what we mean by controlling vocabulary in a language. We do not need to perceive and decode letters in order to read words. This is important. Now, I am talking about the nature of reading. So, we do not need to perceive and decode letters in order to read words. So, it is not necessary that when you read a word, then you have to decode each and every letter and which letter corresponds to which sound, and then you perceive it. It is not necessary. So, we read many letters at the same time. So, if a word is composed of 4 or 5 letters, let us say the word word, it has 4 letters. So, it is not necessary that you analyze W, O, R, D, not like that. So, we look at the word simultaneously and then we comprehend it. We do not need to understand all the words in order to understand the meaning of a text. As I mentioned, that there are certain sight words, function words, for you do not have to really understand the meaning. You can guess the meaning by looking at them. And also, when we read something, a larger text, then many words we skip. So, as I have mentioned there, many things we skip, and we do not sometimes gather meaning of a text by merely reading it. Understanding of a text does not depend only on understanding the words of a text. Meaning lies somewhere else also. And as I already mentioned, that some meaning is there in the mind, and then meaning also comes from what experience, what knowledge the reader has. So, we construct meaning. Now, let us look at the process of reading, what we do with our eyes. The eye does not sweep across a line of text in a continuous fashion. When we read something, then eye does not move continuously in a sweeping manner. It does not sweep across a line. How we read? The eye comes to rest for somewhere around a quarter of a second, and that is called a fixation. So, as you are reading, then the eye comes to rest. It rests for a quarter of a second, around a quarter of a second. So, we fix our eye for some time on something. So, if the word is there, then on either the beginning or the last part of the word or in the middle, somewhere the eyes will be fixed. So, this is called fixation. Then the eye makes a rapid jump. It quickly jumps to the next fixation, and that is called a saccade. That process is called a saccade. And it is during the fixation, when we fix our eyes, that visual stimulation is taken in. So, whatever the information about the visual aspects of the word, that is taken in, and then that goes to the short term memory. Then little or no information is extracted during a saccade. So, when we jump from say one part of the word to another part of the word, or from one word to another word, that is saccade, and during that period, during saccade, either little or no information is extracted. So, all the information or most of the information is extracted during fixation. We can read words without necessarily being able to identify and decode single letters. I have already mentioned that. So, even if you do not decode every letter, every single letter, you will be able to read it. But now let us see what happens. Look at the part of a text that I have given here: dry hay, full stop, the hay caught. So, words are there, you know the meaning of these words, you know why full stop is there, but still, so we have decoded the letters of these words, D-R-Y, H-A-Y, we have fixed our eyes there, fixation is there, then we jumped from one word to another or one part of the word to another part, but we could not get the meaning. The words here do not make sense. That is why we read these words, we read this line, but we did not get the meaning. So, we read a word by fitting the general shape into a sense context. So, we look at the shape of a word and then we also fit it in a sense context, what sense it makes, and that context is absent here. That is why we could not get the meaning of this line which contains 5 words. Now, if someone or if you are given that now read the following text, which words are there, and we do not have any problem reading and comprehending this sentence or the 2 sentences here. Someone carelessly threw a lighted matchstick upon a pile of dry hay. The hay caught fire instantly. So, now those 5 words which you saw previously, they are present here: dry hay, full stop, the hay caught. But now they make some sense here because they are situated in a context. So, it is not enough that we decode words, which letters are there, we have information about the word, but that is not enough. The sense has to be complete. Now, I will give you some more example. This is very interesting. You look at this, and this means there is not a simple one-to-one correspondence or relationship between the amount of text, that means letters, words, and the speed of reading. I will repeat it again. There is not a simple one-to-one correspondence or relationship between the amount of text, that is letters or words, and the speed of reading. So, you do not think that if there are fewer words or fewer letters in a word, then reading is easier. So, there is not, so fewer words or fewer letters, then reading is more convenient. That is not true. For example, if you try to read the following 3 sets, you will find that reading the third set is relatively quicker, and the first 2 sets would make almost the same time, would take almost the same time to read. So, the first set I have given some letters there, 7 letters: Y, T, Q, N, K, G, A. Now, let us read the second set. There are 7 words: ant, good, no, not, quick, tap, you. And third one is a complete sentence: Anita bought a book from the shop. So, as I said, you see that they almost take the same time. So, they have 7 letters in the first set, we have 7 words in the second set, then third set we have 7 words, but they make a complete sentence, and they took almost the same amount of time to read. So, it is not necessary that letters are fewer, words are fewer, then you can read it more fluently and with more comprehension. So, what is important then? So, what is more important for reading with speed and comprehension is the number of sense units, the units that make sense, the units of sense. And a sense unit is a unit where letters are combined into meaningful words or words are combined into meaningful sentences. So, a sense unit is where words are combined into meaningful sentences or the letters are combined into meaningful words. So that whole thing constitutes one sense unit. So the time a text will take to read depends on the number and coherence of the sense units. So how many sense units are there? Not the letters and words, but the sense units, the meaningful units are there, that, and also coherence of the sense units, how they cohere, how they go well together. Then only it will make some sense, and the words in a sentence or the letters in words will make a sense unit. It doesn't depend on the amount of letters and words. The more sense units there are in a text, the longer it will take to read it. The sense units would vary according to the age and level of the students. So what I am saying here is that if you have in a text more sense units, that will take more time to read. For example, in the previous 3 examples, the first set had 7 letters. Only say we had Y, T, Q, N, K, G, A. So 7 letters, but they constituted 7 sense units. So one letter constituted one sense unit, one meaningful sound, one sound which is present in English. So that's why it took longer time. Whereas in the earlier the second set, we had 7 words but more letters, but they constituted 7 sense units. But in the third example, where we have a sentence there, so although the words are 7, but they constitute only 3 sense units. So Anita then bought a book and from the shop. So it has 4 sense units, smaller one, and then those sense units also make 2 bigger sense units. So one is the subject, that is Anita, then bought a book, verb, what did she buy, object and verb, from where, a prepositional phrase, from the shop. So actually sense wise they make at the most 3 bigger sense units. That's why it was easier to read, although the number of words were same as that in the second set. Now the last thing here I said that the sense units would vary according to the age and level of the students. So when you are writing something or when you are giving something to the students to read, then you have to take care that the texts are composed of varying numbers of sense units. So in smaller classes, say in class 1, fewer number of sense units, in class 2, little more, class 3, more, and so on. The text can become dense and denser, and then they will contain more sense units as the students go from one class to another. When we read a text, we look for meaning and understanding the text in terms of its overall sense. This is what I said. If smaller sense units like words and sentences are combined into bigger coherent ones, that is sentences and paragraphs, the whole is much faster to read than if they are separate or incoherent. So in larger text or in sentences, if your words are not connected well, they don't go well together, then the comprehension will be difficult. If in paragraphs, if your sentences are not connected properly, or in a bigger text, in an essay, if one paragraph is not connected well, if it doesn't cohere with the next paragraph, then understanding will be hampered. The students would probably read more successfully if they are given whole meaningful units of text rather than disconnected bits. So that means instead of giving them something to read, even in comprehension questions also. So if there are sentences which are disconnected, so 5, 6, 7 sentences in a paragraph where they are disconnected, then it will be difficult for them to read and comprehend. So they should be arranged in terms of whole meaningful units, because we do not read word by word, one word at a time. That's why what I said earlier holds true. As with speech, we find meaning by grouping words into larger units. I have already emphasized on that. You might think that you read the previous sentence word by word. As with speech, we find meaning by grouping words into larger units. So, pay attention to that. Actually, you will notice that meaning becomes apparent only when you see the line somewhat as the following. So, if you read it like this, as with speech we find meaning by grouping words into larger units. So, meaning did not come because of that, by reading word by word, because actually, so we were comprehending it in terms of the sense units. So, it was as with speech we find meaning by grouping words into larger units. So, these 4 sense units were there, that is why we could read it faster. It makes little difference whether we call these units meaningful chunks or use more technical terminology such as phrases and clauses or constructions. The point is the same. So, in various literature you will find these units are called chunks, or as I did not mention it, but you can also call them phrase. For example, from the shop, that is a phrase, and clauses. So, as you know, you must have already done that in English classes, in grammar class, clauses are bigger than phrases. So, or the constructions, that is also another name for the same thing, construction. Sentence can be a construction, clause can be a construction. So, the point is the same, that means we read chunks, not individual words. Successful reading with comprehension results from the understanding we bring to the text, which is often based on the previous knowledge about the style or story of the text. So, whatever understanding what we already have in store in our mind, so they influence the previous knowledge or the background knowledge. So, that influences our reading. So, we bring meaning, we bring some understanding from these previous knowledge and the background knowledge that we have. It is not necessary that we understand all the words to understand the meaning of a text. We need to understand some words, but in no case all. For example, this you must have seen in your daily life also. While reading an editorial or a classified column in a newspaper, we often skip or at times misread words in order to make sense of the whole text more quickly and more conveniently. This implies that we should not insist too strongly on our students understanding every word, but rather encourage them to go for the overall meaning of a text. Our understanding does not depend simply on reception of words. The process of reading actually involves constructing meaning from a text. We construct the meaning by depending on the knowledge that we have, linguistic knowledge in the brain, and how the brain or mind interacts with society, that is the knowledge of the world. So, comprehension is the ultimate the goal of reading. Comprehension is the process of deriving meaning from connected text. It involves word knowledge, vocabulary, as well as thinking and reasoning. Comprehension is not a passive process, but an active one. The reader actively engages with the text to construct meaning. The active engagement includes making use of prior knowledge, I have already mentioned, or background knowledge. It involves drawing inferences from the words and expressions that a writer uses to communicate information, ideas, and viewpoints. Instruction can improve comprehension by focusing on concepts and the vocabulary used to express them. So, for successful comprehension, children need to have both knowledge of the language system, that is the linguistic knowledge called KOLS in short, and knowledge of the world, KOW in short. Let us look at this cartoon, Archie's cartoon. Here there is a phrase there, or you can say a sentence there, no dogs allowed, and how Archie gets the meaning of it. So, he thinks that it means dogs are not allowed in this restaurant or in this shop, no dogs allowed. So, he thinks and says, don't they know that dogs can't read? So, he thinks that this sentence, this poster is there for the dogs to read, whereas a person who is older than Archie, who is grown up, who has more experience of the world, who has control of the socio-cultural aspects of language, other nuances of language, then that person will understand that if a person goes in the shop, inside the shop, then with that person dog cannot go. But so that is the difference. Knowledge of the world. This child has less knowledge of the world than a grown up person or an adult. That's why she knows the words, she knows the meaning of the sentence, but she lacks something, and that is knowledge of the world. Now, let us look at two more processes that are involved in reading. The first one is sub-vocalization. You must have seen children when they read in the beginning, say class 1 and class 2, so they put their fingers on each and every letter. So, C-A-T, cat, W-A-N-T-S, wants, T-O-2, G-O, go, cat wants to go, like that. So, that is actually, as I have already mentioned here, that reading depends on our knowledge of the language, spoken language. So, any written thing actually depends largely on our knowledge of the spoken language. So, what happens? The mind, the brain takes in the information through sounds, sound waves, and then when we start reading and writing, then those sounds are also associated with the letters, the pictures of the letters. So, that is why the first process is that it has to be heard, the sound. So, when we read something as child, as kid, then we try to, we make it audible so that the brain receives sound waves. Letters cannot go through our eyes directly or through our ears directly. So, they have to be converted into sounds, then only the brain can perceive it. So, that is why we read that. So, that is important for us to do. But in the beginning years, that is a good habit, that is necessary to make connection between letter and sound, and also to understand the phonemics of it. That means which sound differentiates meaning in which way in my language, the language that I am reading or that I am speaking. So, that is why it is important. But as you grow, as children grow older, then they have to get rid of this habit. They have to stop reading it aloud, saying the same word inside the mind, whether vocally or by just whispering or making it sound inside the head. So, do not read inside the head as you read something. So, do not make it vocal, and this process is called sub-vocalization. Vocalization is when we speak from our lips, so we make sounds vocal, we make it audible, and sub-vocalization is we are not reading from here, it is not audible there, but actually we are reading it, we are vocalizing it, giving it sound shape inside our brain. So, that is sub-vocalization. So, as I have mentioned here, sub-vocalization works well for young children in first 2-3 years of school, and it also works well for anyone learning to read for the first time. But when they grow and go to higher classes, it is no longer necessary to voice the words as they read them in order to understand them. Why? Because brain already knows a lot of the words by that time. So, they do not have to convince themselves orally saying that yes, I know the meaning of this word, etc. So, older students are supposed to already know what many words mean just by looking at them. Then only reading becomes fluent and effortless. So, instead of involving the brain, the eyes, the ears and the mouth, our eyes and our brain are quite capable of reading and comprehending all by themselves. So, as we grow older, then we have to get rid of this habit of using the ears and the mouth as well, because eyes and brain can take care of the reading, whatever we see through eyes, and that goes to the brain and then in visual cortex area, and we understand what we are reading. So, that they are enough. We do not have to use our mouth and ears also. So, this is what I meant by sub-vocalization. It hampers your speed also and comprehension. If all the time vocalization is there or sub-vocalization is there, then it hampers comprehension and reading speed, because we tend to read word for word that time. The next process that I wanted to tell you is regression. So, as I already mentioned that when we read something, we do not read each and every letter or each and every word. The eyes make some fixation at some point, and then the eye rapidly jumps to the next word or next part of the word, and meaning is comprehended, meaning is perceived in the time of fixation, not when the eyes jump, not during the period of saccade. So, only information that we gather, the knowledge, the meaning is during fixation. But what happens if you have not mastered the words? If the knowledge of the word, also the knowledge of the world is not perfect, not proper in a child, then the child will not understand the meaning of what she is reading. So, that is why she will not be sure what I have read, did I understand or not. So, she tends to go back. So, there will be more fixations and more saccades, and time will be lost. So, as we get meaning during fixation, if there are too many fixations, that means there will be too many jumps, too many saccades. So, the meaning will be lost, or meaning taking will take longer time. That is why it is a bad habit. So, that we have to train children in such a way that they do not regress too much, they do not reread the same thing, because that will hamper their comprehension. Subvocalization can also cause regression, for the reason that our eyes usually move faster than the mouth. So, we talk fast, we can use our mouth for talking fastly, but when we read, then eyes do not move so fast. So, when the difference between what our eyes see and what our mouth reads becomes too much, comprehension falters, it is affected adversely. So, if we take care of these two things, regression and subvocalization, that will help students in becoming fast reader. They can read faster, they can comprehend better. So, this is what I have already said. So, you have to reduce the number of eye jumps, the saccades, then only we can concentrate more on reading and getting meaning during the fixation time. So, today we talked about many things, mainly what is reading, and as we discussed, reading is to read something, to identify the words, read the words and comprehend. It is for comprehension. Then we also talked about the nature of reading, and there we saw that we do not read each and every letter. Maybe we read many letters at the same time, then our eye gets fixation on some part of the word, then it jumps to the next, and this is how we read. We do not read continuously, all the words continuously. There are breaks, fixation, jump, jump and so on. So, that was important. Then we also talked about why subvocalization is bad as children go to higher classes. It is good for 1 or 2 years when they are learning how to read, that time it is important, but later on slowly they have to get rid of this habit. So, these are the things that you should know in order to teach proper reading in class. Make use of these theories and also these understandings that you had, and you can conduct a reading class in a much better way. That is all for today. Thank you.